Good morning. Welcome to this fourth and final session of these discussions on science policy. Today we have a panel of four discussing environment and sustainability and what the responsibilities of Academia Europaea should be in the current climate crisis. I will introduce to you our chair, Professor Paul Holm, Professor of Environmental History at Trinity College, Dublin, and he will introduce his panelists.
Thank you very much, and I will be very brief as we have already eaten into our time. So what I will do is move very quickly to the panel. So Professor Verena Winiwarter will first introduce the task force on environment and climate action, which was set up by Academia Europaea last year. And we'll then have short interventions by Professor Peter Wagner and Professor Jen Hill. And then we will have a short Q&A. We will take a breakout for just 5-7 minutes where you will sit in your chairs. You're not moving anywhere, but you will be given a handout that we ask you to fill in. So that probably will set your mind in motion, and then we will ask you to hand in your responses in a box when you leave the room after the end of this session. We will, after you've filled in the questionnaire, we will open for further questions and comments. So that's the program, and I'll move quickly over to Verena.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nisha, and thank you everybody for being here. And I would like to have my first slide, please. That's the second slide. Can I have the first slide, please? Thank you very much. I just would like to start that Academia Europaea set up a task force on environment, climate, and sustainability. And we managed to have members from all classes of Academia Europaea here, with me having been asked and having accepted the honor to chair that task force, with Deputy Poul Holm as Deputy Chair, Peter Wagner representing Class A2, Esten Janssen and Nebojša Nakocenovic representing Class B, and Patricia Holm and Jane Hill, who's also joining us here, representing Class C. Before we move into this whole thing, I would like to make a case for action here. Many members of Academia Europaea have been engaged in their own academic capacities in issues of sustainability, climate change, climate crises, and the environment. We just at the business meeting heard about Steve Evans being engaged as an engineer in sustainability solutions. Still, the Climate Action Tracker yesterday released a report that in 40 different climate action indicators, society is not moving into the right direction in any. So the case for action is still there, most recently spelled out in the IPCC's assessment report number 6. The synthesis report is not yet out. But after the first report in 1990, which is 32 years ago, things have not gotten a lot better. But the assessment reports have gotten a lot better. They have moved into the idea of how to complement the risks that they identify on one side here, on your left side, with the climate resilient development, which is on the right side. And let me sort of zoom into this link between the now and the then, which is called from urgent to timely action. And I'm going to zoom into this. We need urgent action, that's pretty clear. And knowledge and capacity building are among the list of things that would move us from urgent to timely action. We could catalyze conditions by using interdisciplinary approaches, the authority of scholars, the diversity of scholars, and whatever Academia Europaea does, it should be cooperation, not duplication of efforts already undertaken. So we took action. In June 21, the Board of Trustees, wishing to take a proactive stance on issues of climate and environment change research, planned for an ad hoc task force, and the terms of reference were fixed by David, whom I don't quite see now, but he did that. David Coates wrote the first terms of reference in July 21, and then from August 21 to March 22, the group was set up, and Christine Bakken, whom you saw speaking on behalf of the Bergen Hub, was absolutely vital in providing assistance and setting up the survey. And without the Bergen Hub's commitment, this would not have been possible. The member survey, I'll give you a few brief ideas about it in a moment. Some of you might be in this room who filled out the member survey. Thank you to everybody who did. On March 10th, we finalized with a report, and that includes some recommendations. And I was asked, and gladly, of course, did so. We presented these recommendations at the end of May to the Board of Trustees with a positive response. So by August, oops, I should be fast, but not so fast. By the end of August, we have a draft mandate for something that Academia Europaea has not yet done before, for a permanent task force on environment and sustainability. And today, we're actually officially launching this task force with its mandate, with its new mandate. So much for the bureaucracy of it. The task force, in its report, suggested that the board set up such a permanent working group to form a coalition of the willing and strengthen the involvement across the membership. And we also made clear that this is going to be a paper tiger if it doesn't have permanent administrative staff and a permanent administrative base with access to infrastructure beyond what the Bergen Hub, who's already doing a lot of things, can provide. As to the size and membership structure, we suggested a core group of 2 to 3 colleagues per topic and a sizable size of not more than 10 people, because otherwise you can't get things to work. With the tasks to meet approximately once a month, to organize topical subgroups from the membership beyond that core group, and to organize events or to draft papers. So that's what scholars usually do when they think urgent action is required. I would like to give you some first glimpses from the survey, and you'll hear more on that from Peter Wagner. People in the survey mentioned energy transition and climate change overlapping with energy, and somewhat less land use and urban issues as research areas for which Academia Europaea has expertise, but not necessarily a specific role that is not already taken up by other institutions and organizations. There were repeatedly mentioned themes as possible topics of the involvement because of their overarching interdisciplinary and, of course, international nature, global coordination, questions of mindsets and worldviews regarding the environment, and a very important hot topic, in my personal opinion, the relation between environment, sustainability, and social inequality, often now framed as climate justice, but more than that, environmental justice writ large. The interface between scientific knowledge and socio-political action is something that Academia Europaea has been doing a lot. Science communication, trust in science. Trust in science, I think, is specifically important because people pretend to distrust science because of something which is called solution aversion. They claim not to trust the science because what the science is describing to them as necessary action they don't want to do. Solution aversion has been researched quite often now, and social obstacles to effective action. There is, of course, also the concern with authenticity. A society that is not mending their own business in terms of environment and sustainability cannot pretend to give advice to the public on that. Sustainability of our own academic practices has to be an issue, also mentioned in the survey, and I was glad it was mentioned. We had suggested that these list of engaged members who responded to the survey would be given a first feedback, that we would update the membership database because we found out via the survey it wasn't yet completely perfect, and check the distribution system. And I hope this test of the distribution system has effects beyond the task force, and explore whether intensified communication with other academies might be fruitful in this. And I think the Cardiff Hub could be brought into this. And to provide a system of informal cooperation. One of the things that members of the task force suggested was to consider planning a high-level event of a Congress type, and when we go up to the next meeting in Munich, we want to pursue the question if this is an actionable item. It is mandatory, I think, that we pursue things together with other academies, and Jane and Peter will speak to what that actually means also. SAPEA could be one way of bringing further the sustainability and environment issues. Now, one thing that we did was to organize a first webinar, Changing Minds or Changing Systems to Avert Dangerous Climate Change. And I would like to take this opportunity to invite you all on Tuesday, the 29th of November, at 16 hours Central European time. A very, very good panel of experts will be talking to this. So one of the things that was in our mandate was to organize these webinars. We've delivered on that. And with that, I'm going to move over to Peter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Verena. Let me just say, I will be brief overall. Let me just say, for those who stick close to the program, I think you will have understood that I will not give the presentation which is announced there. Anyone who's interested in that, contact me. We decided we need the time to talk about the task force and the future steps. What I would like to do in a few minutes is just to go back to the survey, as Verena has said, and focus a bit on some key questions and also give them a bit my own interpretation, my own take on them. What we have seen, we're very pleased with the result. Many of you have responded and very positively responded. But there is clear that there was one basic tension. The question came up, well, many of us and many others are doing already many things. What is the specificity of what Academia Europaea can do on this matter? Is there anything of that kind? That was then contrasted, that's the other side of the tension, with in many responses a great sense of urgency, even of emergency. We should do something, we have to do something given the overall situation. Now in this light, let me just talk about three issues which are open for discussion, and the first two at least may be part of an answer to these questions. First, certainly we are a European academy, so the very European nature may be something that is specific to what we can do on the one hand in coordinating with other academies, national academies, also outside of Europe, but also looking at Europe as a world region in the overall setting of environmental degradation and climate change and other sustainability issues. To see that, I mean, just to give you one example, also to provoke you a bit, the European Commission in documents likes to talk about being at the forefront of these issues, forefront of dealing with climate change. I think we should look at that and investigate that. I think there are good arguments in thinking that this is plainly not true. Secondly, we are an academy with including all disciplines, and we have seen some statements in the interviews, in the survey actually said that the knowledge is all there. What is missing is the action. So if we look more closely, we see that in the climate sciences, the earth sciences, and related fields, there is actually an accumulating and constantly improving, as Verena was saying, knowledge about the key issues. But if you look, for instance, at the IPCC, the involvement of social scientists and humanities scholars is very limited, mostly economists, and often also in a subordinate function. One can say that for sociologists, political scientists, international relations people. They are asked to address topics that are pre-framed by knowledge in other areas. So what we can do, I think, is open up a full-scale, a comprehensive understanding of the kinds of knowledge that are needed and the way they can be connected to each other. That actually would be what my own interest is and what my substantive presentation would have been about. I think what we see there, if we look at this knowledge-action gap, as some people call it, what we need to understand much better, and that is what the social sciences and humanities can contribute, how the trajectory towards our current fossil fuel intensity has been embarked upon historically and in social, political, international contexts. Last point, and that is maybe the most open question. I mean, we are an academy, we are an association of scholars, but there is this sense of urgency and emergency. The question is, how far would we like to go in terms of activism? I mean, we see that the environmental and climate situation is constantly deteriorating. And we see, on the other hand, also see very clearly that the social responses to this, they are, and understandably so, radicalizing. If you look at how the government of Pakistan was speaking after the recent inundations and extreme weather events, they were calling more urgently than ever, like island societies before, for international action, and this will increase. On the other hand, we have a radicalization in our own societies, and also for good understandable reasons. If we as scholars don't address these urgencies, then we may be failing by just withdrawing into the own scholarly perspective. That's my angle on this, and I leave you with that and give the word to Zane.
Thanks very much, Peter and Verena. Could I have the last slide of the presentation, please? One with suggested actions. The next slide. That's it. Thank you very much. So hopefully what you're gathering from this presentation is that we're a very interdisciplinary group across the different classes from the academy. So I'm in class C, I'm an ecologist. So my research for many years has been examining how biodiversity responds to climate change and that interaction between the environment, biodiversity and climate. And so I guess for me, this linkage is not unusual, and we're well aware of those synergies about the degree to which climate and biodiversity are linked, as Verena outlined. And then thinking about how the academy can contribute to this and bring something distinctive, and also stressing that interdisciplinarity. So for those of you who were here yesterday, I was really interested in one of the discussions yesterday when Helga was discussing social innovations and those links between the social innovations and the technological innovations that Shankar was talking about, and how those two things are linked. And I think there was a lot to take from that in terms of thinking how we're going to address these environment and biodiversity issues, bringing that interdisciplinary perspective to the question. And so I think when we're thinking about how we can live more sustainably and address the COP goals, thinking about those goals that Verena's mentioned for IPCC and IPBES around carbon and biodiversity, it's that recognition that they are linked, and they're also linked to questions about equality and social justice. So I think for this group, it's absolutely vital that we have input across the different classes of the academy, and also that there is a focus across Europe, and to think about what we can bring that is distinctive and interdisciplinary. So as you can see here from the slides, we've tried to pick out some of the key findings and where the next steps should be based on the survey of members. And again, thank you ever so much for filling that out. So this issue we really picked out. It has to be something distinctive that the Academy can contribute to that is not already being done by other learned societies or within other countries. And this really strong stressing around the interdisciplinarity, which I hope you've heard from Verena and Peter as well. So just picked out what the membership survey thought should be the favoured activities. So those are the top 3 that you can see there. Research-based policy reports, contributing to public debates, and also contributing to expert hearings. So those were 3 things that the feedback from the surveys implied that the Academy should be doing. And the particular actions were to link and do more work with SAPIA, to be making more public statements and also making stronger links with other academies so that our voice is louder if we're interacting and talking together. So that's the sort of high level outcomes from the task force survey. So I guess what my question to you would be, and it comes back to Peter's comment about there is urgency to this as well, and also this thought leadership and how the Academy can be leading in this space, whatever these topics would be. So what I'm posing to you is that what actions would you like to see the task force achieving, perhaps by our next meeting in March, but also maybe thinking a bit longer scale than that? And also, what topics should we be focusing on? So those are the sort of 2 challenges for you to be thinking about, and maybe that'll come back in the Q&A as well. So I'm just going to stop at this point and hand over to Paul.
Thank you very much. Right, so you've heard from the task force, and now we will have time for a few comments and questions, and then we'll take that short writing break and then go back to questions and comments. Eva. So we have a microphone coming up.
Yeah, actually there is a lot of complementarity, and we had the Class C meeting on 25th of October. I don't know whether, Jean, have you been there? You were there? No. So actually we were having a brainstorming meeting, and one of the thematic was, what can we do with the climate change, food security, energy crisis, what kind of solutions we can offer from the side of the life sciences. And we have several proposals, some of them for short-term solutions and other for long-term solutions. And these are not dealt in your proposals. So when you made these questionnaires, these kind of questions were not asked. And probably you did not get the answer from life science classes for this kind of questions. So it would be really nice to have a common brainstorming meeting together, because we are started something. We would like to make also statement, SAPEA statement. It was briefly discussed already. We are preparing something which will be ready within a relatively short time, and we can see how we can maybe bring together the 2 task forces or the 2 actions. So we have to find our niche when we can give something which is unique, what is our specialty to the world and for Europe. There are several ways where we can do something. One of them is, for example, with the energy crisis, all the fertilizers prices will go up. It will be difficult to use so much nitrogen fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizers pollute a lot of the environment, and we have to find some other solutions. So, for example, it's not exploited how biological nitrogen fixation can give some kind of solution for food production and security. There are also the new plant genomic techniques, what can do with climate change, more resistant plants, use less pesticides. So there are many ways where we can do something. but I think we were planning it in the class C, but maybe we can think about it, how to bring it together.
Thank you. Over there.
Thank you. I'm András Baldi, ecologist. I fully support the idea that IPCC and IPBES, biodiversity decline and climate change should be combined. It's very obvious, not only for us as scientists, but it's already linked in the policy arena as well, as there are much more and more push to work together for the two intergovernmental bodies. You mentioned the IPCC assessment report as a basic document. I suggest that also use the IPBES global assessment from 2019. IPBES is the intergovernmental platform on biodiversity and ecosystem services. And then I have a more radical idea that we are talking about sustainability, but sustainability is, maintain something on the long term, but it's not good because all processes in our world, the mainstream is just destroying the environment and our well-being on the long term. So we should use probably the term used in the IPBES global assessment, the transformational change. We have to change the processes and not sustain them. Okay, it's a long story how it should be done. And it's, of course, still at the very beginning, this idea, but I think we should, based on scientific evidence, but should be honest, which means that we have to be radical. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other immediate comments? There's one.
Thanks, Rebecca Fitzgerald, Cambridge. Just to make a point, building on what Eva said in terms of the interaction between the science and the Class C and the other classes, there's a big intersection between health and climate, and I wonder if that's something we might capitalize on.
Excellent. And there is one over here. Sorry, no. I think we need the mic for the Zoom.
Thank you very much. Scott Bremer, University of Bergen and the Young Academia of Europe. I see that a lot of these really important institutions like the IPCC are, of course, restricted by their mandate as a review body. And so I think it's really important, your point, Peter, for example, that a body like Academia Europaea is not so restrained and is able to consider other ways of knowing, other types of knowledge that, for example, the IPCC cannot so easily consider. So I think there's an opportunity there for us to do something that expands the work of these other institutions that have this inertia and mandate.
Thank you. In the back.
Anja Böckmann, CNRS Lyon. I was wondering also whether, rather than making statements, because there's many statements around already, could we find a way, and I have no good idea at this point in time, to more listen to the population? What are their concerns? What are their non-understandings? Where don't they get the message? Because I think the message doesn't go over, so why doesn't it? And we have social sciences, so maybe that would be an important role here also.
Thank you. Right, I think we will move into the writing session, and just to make sure that you actually can focus, we'll just keep quiet for 5 minutes, and hope you brought a pen and just write down your thoughts. And as I said, please leave your paper when you leave the room in the box provided outside. This will be extremely important for the task force going forward. So I'll shut up and give you 5 minutes.
Does everybody have one?
Yes. We look forward to all your input. Peter has some thoughts from the first Q&A.
But first of all, thank you for the interventions, the first contributions, from which I take not least this understanding, I'm using your word, that indeed some transformational understanding and transformation action is needed. I take that from several of the contributions. I just wanted, in the light of your remark about Class C, we've said that before, I think, but I wanted to underline a bit how we should see this process from my point of view. I mean, this is really, I think it is something which was initiated by the Board of Trustees, but it is an action by all classes of the Academy. And our small group was composed of all classes. The survey was sent to everyone. So it is a bottom-up initiative. We are collecting the information, the willingness from everyone. And this is, in a sense, the next step. That's that we talk in person about these next steps to take, that we ask for further insights. And then, so this has taken a year already, so it is a bit of a slow process, but we wanted to discuss this here in this assembly meeting because of the need to accelerate from now on, to get as broad a commitment from academy members as possible, and as broad as possible the insights from the various classes and disciplines. Only that remark.
Jane?
So it was fantastic to hear the enthusiasm for that interdisciplinarity. So thinking about how we link food, human health with capping greenhouse gas emissions and conserving biodiversity. And those are all decisions that we are making about how we use landscapes, and the degree to which there are trade-offs, and the degree to which there may be win-win solutions. So I'm really interested to hear how people are seeing those synergies and those links. And that makes me even more certain that any future event needs to be across all the classes, and that we shouldn't be going down any particular one class event, if you like, but it's bringing people together to encourage us all to communicate with each other, which I know sometimes can be hard because we have different terminology, we have different ways of viewing the world, different worldviews as well. And maybe that's how Academia Europaea can bring something distinctive, maybe. I don't know what other countries are doing, but that synergy, and I'm really interested to hear the enthusiasm around that and the recognition, of course. We all know that these issues are linked. Huge questions, but maybe that's where the Academy can make progress by being much more interdisciplinary than perhaps seeing each of these problems on its own, but seeing them linked.
Thank you. Verena?
Yeah, I would like to continue in these lines. Some of the members who responded to our survey said, well, I don't think that with my disciplinary specialization I can contribute. And I don't think that this is true, because there is, as I said, there is also this question of being authentic in your own academic practice. And whatever you are in your own academic practice, you can serve as a role model for a sustainable academic practice, which anybody can do with whatever their field is. But I would also want to point out, I'm the head of the scientific advisory board in environmental matters of the city of Vienna. And we just discussed that this board would provide for the city of Vienna a report on co-benefits. And I think that this issue of co-benefits, to which you, I think, Jane, alluded to, would bring people from a very diverse disciplinary range into this. Not just health, which is an important co-benefit, but also urban planning and also, I think, all kinds of the humanities, because of things like eco-fiction and eco-media, green films, stuff like that. So I think that there is, if you think it's not for you, think again.
Thank you. Right, now over to you. Questions, comments, suggestions? How do you want us to take this forward? And give us some examples of your own practice, perhaps. Yes.
Thanks. I just thought I'd share what we're doing in Ireland to address these interlinked crises, the biodiversity and climate crises. So we formed the All-Ireland Climate and Biodiversity Research Network, which actually cuts across 2 governmental jurisdictions, Ireland and the UK, because we're treating the island of Ireland as a biogeographic unit. And we're asking questions around how we can design an integrated research programme across the island of Ireland to address both of those crises together in an inter and transdisciplinary way. So we are actively, we have members of our research network from across different disciplines. We've decided to take a solutions-focused approach. So it's providing research and evidence to support this transformational change that we need. So that's just one example of how we're working in one part of Europe to try and do this. And I'd be very happy to link up with other networks across the continent who are doing something similar and trying to use this inter and transdisciplinary approach. And perhaps that's somewhere where Academia Europaea could play a role, is joining together different research networks, or we need scale basically to tackle these problems. So the more critical mass we can get that buys into this trans and interdisciplinary approach and tackling problems as systems rather than isolated issues, we can get more strength by doing it that way. So that's just my suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you. In the back.
So I'm new to the Academy, but I was wondering how well Academy at the moment also supports scientists themselves making greener choices. Is there a policy document that would help the scientists? Okay, now you're planning your research. Can you do sustainable research communication, sustainable research empowerment, these kind of ideas that would also help academia itself to be more sustainable, or sort of lead by example. And I think there is a lot of space to lead by example in many of the things that we see around us.
Thank you. Over here.
I'll give one answer, and I don't know if it's out of date. ETH Zurich used to teach chemical engineers to create very simple experiments and create very messy outputs. But by the time you are a third-year chemical engineer, your job is to take the messy outputs of the first-year students and turn them back into easily usable original chemicals. And we can do these things if we put our mind to it. So I think there are many solutions. My world is the world of engineering and industry. And I do worry that our conversations are too much about science, politics, and citizens. And we are falling into the trap of the business world, who are leading us into this trap very deliberately. You must blame your politicians or yourself for not dealing with these massive challenges of climate and biodiversity. Industry is very, very good at doing things at scale. And that includes doing bad things at scale. We must include them in our understanding of the system.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. So we have one over here. Yeah. Yes. Plenty of you want to speak up, so I'm keeping tab. Lady there.
Yes, Petra Rudolph, University of Groningen. In the last year, there has been a massive movement taking off all over Europe in greening labs at universities in all various disciplines. And I think that the Academy could have an ambassador role in spreading the knowledge of best practices throughout Europe in those countries where this movement is still starting, so that people don't have to reinvent the wheel, but can learn from those who have already started.
Thank you. Gentleman here.
Yes, thank you. Well, we have been messing as a society with the climate for many generations, putting more and more CO2 into the atmosphere. And we now realize that we will have to withdraw some of it. This is something we did not want to consider, but there is no other choice at this point. Even if we were to stop emitting any CO2, there will still be too much in the atmosphere. And in fact, we will continue to emit quite a lot for quite a while. So we are now moving, not myself, but I know it's going on, into practices of removing CO2 from the atmosphere through all kinds of techniques and storing the CO2 either in the geological strata or in the ocean water, which is my own specialty. And in fact, it is a totally new world in which we're moving. And as a scientific community and even as a society in general, we're not ready for that. So I think there is a need for a lot of thinking about this new world into which we're moving. We're reversing, basically, we will be reversing what we had done for 2 or 3 centuries by starting to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. What does it imply? So I suggest this is a theme that we should consider.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, the gentleman there. No, I thought, Jamie, did you have? No, okay, all right, then it's your turn. Very good.
Thank you very much. I'm a philosopher of science, and I've noticed that in the task force, if I'm correct, there is no member from the A1 class.
Oh, there is.
You said the A2. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So I would like to add the focus on the solution aversion that you've mentioned, because there is a lot of knowledge by people here and elsewhere, and the big obstacle is to implement it by the public, the governments, etc. And perhaps our organization can help in the direction of task force that will emphasize the communication, the way to communicate these ideas in a way that will be acceptable to the public. There are conspiracy theories, there are anti-scientific movements that have been felt not only towards the climate change challenges that endanger our luxurious ways of living that have all these results. They've been present also, as we could see, in the COVID pandemic. So the sentiments are, in a sense, similar, and I think we can and should learn from that experience and move towards influencing the public, not only accumulating knowledge, which is of course the first thing to do, but this we already have, maybe incomplete, maybe we have to learn more and have the industry join the forces, but the communication in which we have experts here and showing why science, even though science involves inherently skepticism, etc., probabilistic considerations, why probabilistic considerations are good rather than bad, why despite all this inherent skepticism and self-criticism in science, science does provide answers that we can follow and we should follow with certainty. So this at the public arena, I think, is something that we can contribute to as an organization. Thank you. Much.
Right, over here.
My name is Dan Larhammer. I'm from Uppsala University and the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. The previous speaker gave an excellent introduction to what I would like to say. I think we can do a much better job by explaining human psychology and communication. Some time ago, I had the pleasure to chair a committee in ICREA that wrote the document Fact or Fake, How to Tackle Science Disinformation. If we can explain to the general public how human thinking works and how it does not work, I think we can increase the understanding on how disinformation spreads. And I, as a neuroscientist, find this totally fascinating, how easily we can be misled, and by wishful thinking, we can mislead ourselves. Now, I'm working at a molecular level, but the psychology here is extremely important to convey the message. And there is a lot of information out there. There has been a lot of research done during the past few years. We have this wonderful little booklet called Handbook of Debunking that has been compiled by 2 psychologists, how to convey information. And we all know, I suppose, about the famous Dunning-Kruger effect, with the title of that paper from 1999 saying, unskilled and unaware of it. And there is research showing that that applies to climate change, denial of vaccines, and so forth. So by including more psychology, I think we can make people interested in why we are so easily misled, and that will lead to questions. Why do I think in that particular way?
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I think we are moving into the last 2 comments. So there's one there. Yes. And anyone wants to? Yeah, okay, and then you will have the final word down there.
I am a literary scholar, and I have the same question as the philosopher. Perhaps I don't see how the literature, but I have ideas, how literature could contribute to this interdisciplinary approach. I noticed in the COVID how much comparison between catastrophes in time, because I'm specialist of the memory of catastrophes. And people like to compare what happened in 16th century, in medieval times, and what happened now. And I think we could contribute to make a diachronic, for example, a diachronic perspective on this, because people understand and accept more things when they have a large perspective on the phenomenon. And I think philosophy, literature, history could really highly contribute to communicating and reflecting about what happens now.
Thank you very much. And quickly in the back. Down there. And then Helga Novotny as a short intervention, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Helena Bilanjic from the University of Augsburg, and I'm a communication scholar, and the previous comments all but called my name because I'm one of the communication scholars that actually does researches communication, science communication, environmental communication. And I can confirm that there is a huge field of communication insights, how media reports, news, social media contributions, but also fictional films and novels can contribute to a public's understanding of climate change and how they can especially motivate people to take action. And the gap between knowledge and action, of course, it has been mentioned in the plenary, is extremely hard to gap. And I think my discipline can contribute a lot. And I also think that literature can contribute a lot because fictional films are important because they reach a public that usually would not open the newspaper. So that was my comment, just to reinforce you to go in that direction. And I think there are a lot of people apart from me who could contribute to that task force.
Thank you. Helga Novotny.
Thank you. I just wanted to share an experience with you. When the Volkswagen Foundation was celebrating its 40th anniversary, they asked me whether I would be willing to go through their archives, because they were the ones who had financed the Club of Rome study. So I got to see the peer reviews, which was interesting in per se, but they also asked me to look at the impact. So I got all the news material, etc., and it, as you know, it had a huge impact. The impact from the public was, wow, a computer has predicted the future. And then there were various other, comments in the media, but there was one group that was completely dismissive of the Club of Rome and the results, and these were the economists. And the economists said a model that does not include price is not a model that we can take serious. So let's not repeat the same mistake again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, and I leave it to Verena to wrap up this very exciting session.
So I'm supposed to end 3 minutes ago. I would like to thank you all. I think we've been scribbling fast. There was a very conscious decision on our part to do this analog. We were working under the assumption that those people who had filled in the survey would only overlap to a very small percentage with those present in the room now. And we did not want to give you something to play with on your phone by sort of, clicking and giving us likes. Because we are living in a mediatized society, and that is one of the problems that need to be addressed, that the main channel, how the public perceives of the world, is via media. We shall have to resort to this kind of electronic communication for the follow-up, because we will diligently look through what has been filled in the survey now, and we will, in the next newsletter, after we're done with this of Academia Europaea, keep you all informed about the basic outcomes of today's session, which leaves me with thanking you all for this absolutely fantastic, communicative, and I think forward-looking panel. And I hand it over to Paul to say that lunch is ready.
To just say, remember to hand in your paper when you leave, and there is a box waiting for your stuff. So sorry for eating into your lunch. Thank you.